and welcome to the Borderline Podcast with me, your host, Andrew Willix. And tonight, guys, I'm joined by the fantastic Taiba Bajar, founder of Autism Brain Empowerment and author of her book, Unlock Autism, which features a unique 7-step action plan that can help children reach their full potential, reduce symptoms of autism, and foster leadership throughout the world. Now, I know firsthand how many parents in this little area of IMO are affected by autism and the lack of care that can be provided in communities. So I know firsthand that this discussion is going to hit a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to relate to it. And I think what everybody's going to appreciate is Taiba's knowledge on the subject, her intellect, and obviously her first-hand experiences with it are much to be respected. So I really think this is going to be a great listen to anybody. If you find this relatable, have a family member who is autistic, or you're just wanting to find out more about autism and raise a little bit of awareness as well. So I hope you really enjoy it. Without further ado, enjoy. Right. Well, Taiba Bajar, thank you so much for coming onto the Borderline Podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you for having me, Andy.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. So obviously, like I covered in the intro there, you're the founder of Autism Brain Empowerment, and you're also the author of a book, Unlock Autism, which offers a unique 7-step action plan to help your child reach their full potential, reduce symptoms of autism, and help them foster leadership in the world. So a lot of my audience won't know who you are, although it's an incredibly important conversation that we're about to have. Could you just start us off with what inspired you to write the book, Unlock Autism?
So my whole journey started with my son. So when he was 20 months old, he experienced a skills regression, which was heartbreaking. So when he was born, we didn't think he had any signs of autism, except maybe just like a little bit of a fussy eater. But otherwise, he had eye contact. He even had some words he was speaking. And then at 20 months old, within 1 month, he had lost so many skills. So, for example, he used to be able to feed himself. He stopped being able to do that. He used to be able to name his colors like green, red, say words, and then he stopped being able to do that. He used to have eye contact and he stopped being able to do that. So within 1 month, he lost so many skills. Another one was that he was an early walker. So at 11 months and 5 days, he started walking. But then when he had his skills regression, he now found it harder to get off the floor. So he struggled with walking. And it was a really, really scary period for me and my husband just to watch our son just lose all of his skills. And I have a couple of sisters in the family who are teachers, and they told me that this looks like autism. And obviously, at first I was a little bit like, no, he's fine. And then it was, okay, now that we should face up to a problem. He does have autism. And then the best thing to do is to get that early years intervention. So we went to our GP, and sadly, our GP, she brushed us off. She said he was too young to diagnose, and just kind of brushed us off, didn't really take us seriously. We went to our health visitor, and she took us really seriously, and she referred us to speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, portage, dietitian. She did all the referrals. Sadly, it's been about 3 or 4 years, and some of those appointments haven't even come through yet. And I know it's shocking, but the first appointment that did come through was with his physio. So after about 3 or 4 months on the waiting list, he had an appointment with a physiotherapist, and I felt like, okay, now I'm going to get some help for him. So in the appointment, I explained to her exactly everything that was going wrong and like what we had seen as parents, and I wanted her to tell me that, like, what to do to help him to have a normal life and to do everything that I wanted him to do, like basically to thrive. I wanted my son to thrive. And what happened in that appointment was she was telling me, like, I was like, oh, my son, he does this, he's scared of loud noises. He is, he's always so anxious. All of these things. She was like, yes, that's very common. Yes, he will be like this. Yes. And I was like, she had given up on him that I wanted to give up on him. She had given up on him. And I just realized in that conversation that these people are not going to help me. Like, no one cares about my son as much as I do and our daily life. And and I had knew that the NHS is really overstretched, and the school system's overstretched, and it's all broken. And but when it happens to you, you just feel so alone, and like there's no one really to help you. And it was really really tough time. And then so I just realized there and then that these people aren't going to help me or my son. They'd given up well before I wanted to give up, and that I was going to have to help myself. I actually went to dental school. So my first job was actually as a dentist. I graduated from Bristol Dental School with 2 degrees. One of them is in dentistry, and within dentistry you learn a lot about neuroscience and like about the brain and neuroanatomy. So the brain, it goes through a massive growth spurt in the first 5 years. And I was presenting to I think we had the occupational therapist appointment when he was like 2 years and 2 months. So that physio and occupational therapist appointment, we had it when he was 2 years and 2 months. And so I knew that the brain is going through a massive, growth spurt right now, and all about neuroplasticity, which is about rewiring the brain. So because he's showing certain behaviors now, he doesn't have to be doing it for the rest of his life. But that's not what they were telling me. So I just went into the research and thought, okay, let me find out as much as possible about the biological causes of autism. And I just had this like logic, like if I do the opposite of it, then I will be able to, like, then he'll get better. That was my logic. And then like it worked, which is a good thing. And then that's how I came up with the 7-step autism action plan.
Brilliant.
So
And
no,
that's
I said a lot there.
No, no, no. That was brilliant, powerful, and inspiring as well. Um, how I know myself, typically, if I go down to my GPs to talk about I suffer from anxiety and depression, that they just don't seem to get it. And how difficult was that for you as a parent? Obviously, incredibly difficult when you have an information and background in neuroscience, as you said, and you possibly know a little bit more than them already.
Yes.
How hard is that? Because it must feel to you as well that there's not real a way out of this unless you have to take action yourself.
So with my son, so with his therapist appointments, after I had started my own research, and I kind of like found a path for him. Like I learned about like gut health and methylation and all of these really important things for autistic children, that if you get it right, they are able to start meeting their milestones a lot faster and learn new skills faster. So he carried on with the therapy appointments, and they offered us 1 half-an-hour appointment every 8 weeks. So I know. So it wasn't really going to be enough to help. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to do it myself. So in my future appointments with the physio and OT, I would explain, oh, what about neuroplasticity and like rewiring the brain? And she was like, oh, neuroplasticity. Oh, that's more for stroke victims. So people who've had a stroke. And I just realized that they don't really know this stuff. So, and also where I went to Bristol Dental School, I have loads of friends who were medical students and who are now working as doctors and GPs and all the rest of it. So parents usually present to their GP first. And I have loads of friends who are GPs, and they will often tell me that they don't really learn more than a couple of sentences about autism in medical school. So maybe like one slide in the 6 years they're at medical school, and then it's all brushed over. And they'll often tell me that I know way more about autism than they do. So I think despite its sharp rise really in society and in the severity of its symptoms as well, there's a huge educational mismatch of what doctors are being taught and how they're trained and in medical school to what is actually what they actually know, so that perception of what the public think they know and what they actually know, that sort of thing. I hope that was
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, no, 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 no. Thanks for answering that. So obviously, yeah, it's very hard for doctors to understand and the complexity of autism and the spectrum. So how did you then navigate from the therapies that was offered to writing your book?
So I didn't really set off to write a book. So I just set off like, okay, I have to be the one to help my son the most. So then I just I went into like the scientific research papers to look up the biological causes of autism. And then once I just like learned what they were, I started doing it at home. And then within a few years, within about 18 months, he made dramatic progress. Like he was from non-verbal, and like his nursery teachers always saying to me that he doesn't understand us. Like his swimming teacher was like, he doesn't, we don't think he understands us. I'm like, I know. Like they were telling me for the first time, like I didn't realize. And he was really fussy with eating. Like he had so many, really poor sleep as well. So many of those symptoms, to 18 months later to actually now being confident in public spaces, talking in sentences now. And just like a dramatic improvement that the people around me noticed. The people around me noticed. So they started asking me for help on their own autistic child, and a lot of their children were a lot older than my son. So I just became almost like the go-to expert on autism. Like, oh, and then a lot of people were just sending me videos of their child. Oh, my child's doing this, my daughter's doing this. What can I do? And then I realized like this information is really not out there at all. And even though their children are older than my child, so I would have assumed that they know more about autism than me. They really didn't. So when I was saying something about, the cerebellum, which is an area in the brain, is smaller in autistic children than neurotypical people, they were like, oh, I never even heard of that. And they would have considered themselves an autism expert because of how many years their child has autism for, and how much they've been trying to help their own child. So then I just realized that there was a lot of this information not out there, and that led me to create my own business, Autism Brain Empowerment, where I help parents through a 6-month program, and then to writing this book, Unlock Autism, which describes the 7 steps in the book, 7-step autism action plan.
Excellent. And you're obviously an expert of the subject, but you've got your own personal experience with it as well, being diagnosed at quite a young age. Could you just explain to us a little bit about that with autism and dyspraxia, please?
So that feels like quite a long time ago now. So when I was 23 years old, I was at dental school, and I guess I always had some difficulties with certain things, like practical things. But back in 2013, or no one had really, I'd never even heard of the word dyspraxia, and it was a really difficult time. But I had passed all of my written exams and even all of my practical exams. But then the dean of dental school, like he had a meeting with me, and he was like, we're speaking to all of your professors from all of the different disciplines, so like in radiology, in root canal treatment, in dentures, all of those different dental specialties that we're taught, and they all have said that you've struggled the most in the class, and in those practical subjects you're towards the bottom of the year. So even though he said was actually very mean, and he's like, even though you've passed your practical exams, we feel like it may have been a fluke. Yeah, and it was. I was like, it was really a really horrible thing to say, actually. And then he also said, like, we think you have dyspraxia, and I was like, what's dyspraxia? Then he explained it as dyspraxia is a type of condition where to do with the brain, but it means that you find it harder to do hand-eye coordination activities. You find coordination harder. And he described it, and I was like, oh my god, this is me. And he said stuff like, find it harder to do dancing and sports. And I always had 2 left feet for dancing. I found, I passed my driving test before I started dental school, but I found it harder to pass my driving test. So when he started saying it, I felt like he was painting the whole picture together. And I was like, oh my god, like I think I have dyspraxia, and I had never even heard of that word. So then I got sent to a educational psychologist. They did like a huge 4-hour assessment on me, and in that assessment, she said, we think you have dyspraxia and you're on the autism spectrum. So again, it kind of like makes sense. So like I won't say I have a lot of autism symptoms right now, but I still have like one struggle, which is sometimes I take things a bit too literally, um, which is a bit annoying. So I've got another funny example of that, which I can go into, but of me doing it recently with my sister. So So when someone told me that, everything started to click. So everything started. I'll just go into the story of my sister. So we went to a day trip to Milan recently, and we went on Wizz Airlines, and she's a lot more like a bigger traveler than me, and she does all these budget airlines all the time, and she said, "Oh, Wizz Airlines, they always board you 5 minutes before it takes off." And I was like, "Oh, okay, they board you 5 minutes before it takes off." And then before it took off, I thought, okay, I'll go to the toilet. And I thought, okay, I've got some time. So I started putting my makeup on and everything. And then she came into the toilet. It's like, Taiba, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I thought you said it's not going to board till 5 minutes before it takes off. And she's like, that didn't mean that literally. We're going to miss our plane. So then I was like, oh, I wish she had just told me that instead of 5 minutes before, she actually meant 15 minutes before. So I did take it literally, but that's the one thing I still struggle with. But like growing up, I had some autism symptoms that were missed. Like I found friendship a lot harder in my early years, like throughout primary school and in preschool and things like that. So I had some symptoms, but as I became an adult and as I became a teenager, they didn't really affect me that much dramatically. So I was always on the spectrum for autism and dyspraxia, but it didn't really get diagnosed until I had that assessment when I was 23 and until I went through dental school.
Yeah. Do you think there would be, if you were to have gotten that diagnosis earlier in your life, do you think that would have changed maybe even the possibilities that you would have been able to have? Like you said, there's such a almost seal of fate with the GPs with your son. Do you reckon that would have held you back quite a bit in life?
I have an opinion that if I had known I was on the autism spectrum, or if I had known that I had dyspraxia from a young age, I probably would have leaned into it harder. So I would have like isolated myself, because if something had happened with my friends, I'm like, well, I find friendship harder anyway because I'm autistic. Oh, I want more time to myself anyway because I'm like this. So I think I would have leaned into it harder. And I've noticed some of my friends, one really, really well accomplished individual, she's a doctor and she does marathons and she does so many different things. And she got diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. And she now talks about it all the time, like, oh, because of my ADHD, it's going to cause this issue. And I said to her recently, don't you think since you've discovered you have ADHD, you're using it more as an excuse for new behaviors instead of trying to change? And then she agreed that she did. So I think the empowering thing is to have learned about neuroplasticity at a young age. So if someone had taught me about neuroplasticity at age 11 or age 18, I would have been like, okay, so my brain does this right now. Like I might be clumsy right now. I might find friendship harder right now, but it doesn't have to be like that forever because I can rewire my brain. And neuroplasticity is available, even in your adult years. They've got studies showing that you can access neuroplasticity even at the age of 75. You can do that in your brain. Yeah, so you can keep rewiring your brain. So for me, I think learning about neuroplasticity at a young age would have probably have changed a lot of things for me, and I would have probably leaned into that harder. But learning about dyspraxia and autism at a young age, I'm sort of happy I didn't in that way. Maybe not with the dyspraxia because I probably would have done something else instead of dental school, but definitely with the autism because I was able to make friends. I was able to make really good friends, and to speak up on stage and in school, and I was head girl at sixth form and things like that. I think I would have denied myself those opportunities if I had known I had autism and I was on the spectrum at a young age.
That's such a good point, and so well said, because I think you're so right there. There's so many people that jump on the definition of what can and could control their lives, but at the end of the day, we are still in control. We still have that power. And now we'll talk about your book a little bit more specifically now. And obviously, there's a unique 7-step action plan, which you state out that within 12 months, parents can see a considerable change in milestones within their children. Could you just run us through your programs and why you believe it can and will help so many children and parents.
So I have experience working with lots of different children now, boys and girls, and every single child I've worked with has made an improvement in the reduction of their symptoms and meeting their milestones. And it doesn't matter how severe they've come in or how not severe they've come in. So I've worked with children who are nonverbal and who have started to become conversational after even just a few months, and children who are conversational but they have emotional outbursts, and that's all been able to be addressed. In terms of the 7 steps, again, it's all derived from science and researching the biological causes of autism and how to help your own child. So step 1 is called optimize oxytocin. So oxytocin is a really powerful hormone that we all have inside of our bodies, and it helps us with a wide range of things, including learning new skills faster. So if we're able to do steps at home to boost our child's oxytocin levels, that will help them to learn new skills faster. It can help them to self-regulate their pain better, self-regulate their hunger better. It's the things that autistic children struggle with. So that's step 1. Step 2 is break down blood. So in this section, it involves a blood test to determine to look at the specific biomarkers related to autism, things like an omega-3 index. So this isn't something, it's not a typical blood test that you would get at your GP, that your GP would do for you. And there are a wide variety of biomarkers, which are specific to autistic children. And if you learn what they are, you can optimize that result. For example, omega-3 index between 8 to 12%. So that's a desirable range for concentration and focus and to learn new skills and optimum brain health. But autistic children generally have an omega-3 index of less than 1%. And
Wow.
yeah, and ADHD children typically have an omega-3 index of less than 4%. So these are things that once you learn, you can do things about it and you can optimize it, and so that they're physically able to learn new skills better. So it's just a lot about like brain health and learning what works better and then doing that. So that's step 2, break down blood. That also involves a gene methylation test because autistic children are generally undermethylated as well. So that's also part of step 2. Step 3 is called grasp the gut-brain bond. So grasp the gut-brain bond is all about gut health. So Andy, I'm pretty sure you probably know, you're giving me a lot of nods, so you probably know all about gut health, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit.
Yeah. So just in case your audience do not know yet, so all humans have something called a gut microbiome, which has 10 trillion bacteria in your large intestine, which influence a wide range of things, including anxiety, how fast you learn, your memory, any addictions you have, just a wide variety of things. And autistic children have a typical gut microbiome. So Harvard University, MIT have found that autistic children have a very typical gut microbiome, and they're more prone to conditions such as leaky gut, which is if you change that and you address that, you can decrease a lot of their symptoms. Again, that's part of the program. Step 4 is called take down toxins. So this one surprises a lot of parents. Autistic children have a higher degree of heavy metals inside of their bodies compared to neurotypical children. And that's come there from the environment. But autistic children can generally struggle with detoxification more than neurotypical people. So we all have 4 organs of detoxification, which is your gut, your liver, your kidneys, and your skin. And that's how we push toxins out of our body. And it's also how we let toxins inside of our body as well. So it's a two-way barrier for all 4 organs. There are specific things you can do in your lifestyle and in your diet to help those 4 organs work better. You do that, usually autistic child's engagement just skyrockets. And it's just they're a lot more aware of their surroundings, they're a lot more conversational, they're a lot more engaged, and that's a really nice thing to see. Step 5 is solve with supplements. So there are some supplements which are really good for autistic children, and will boost their brain health. But the supplements chosen on my program are dependent on that gene methylation result that we do in step 2. So that's solved with supplements. Step 6 is called charge the cerebellum. So there's an area on the back of everyone's brain which is called the cerebellum, and it only makes up 10% of the size of your brain, but it has 80% of the brain's connections within it. So it's really, really important, and it's often called the brain's brain. And the cerebellum is smaller in autistic children compared to neurotypical people. But there are exercises you can do to increase the size of your biceps, there are exercises you can do to increase the size of your cerebellum. So we talk about that on my program, and we start doing that on my program. And it's within the book as well. Some recommendations are in the book too. And then step 7 is called empower emotions. So generally, when people think about an autistic individual, they think of someone with poor emotional literacy and poor emotional intelligence. I help parents teach emotional literacy to their child in a very logical way that autistic children start to understand, so that then they are able to benefit from that human to human connection, which is so, so important and protective for our physical health and our brain health. So that's an overview of the 7 steps.
Brilliant, thank you. And look, like you say, you've got biological data, backed science in there, your own understanding, knowledge, and experience.
Yeah.
And so much information crammed into that little section just to try to pick little things out just now. If we could we go back into the importance of detoxification?
Yeah, sure.
And how children can be exposed to the heavy metals from obviously the external environment. Would you be able to talk a little bit on that, please?
So it's actually astonishing how much we are surrounded by toxins in our environment in 2024 that we don't even consider them as toxins anymore. So it's really, really sad actually that we live in a society like this. But even our UK tap water has lead in it. It has lead in it. And
Yeah.
there's the World Health Organization say that there is no amount of lead which is safe for consumption. And then they famously have done so many studies where they've removed lead from petrol fumes, and then homicide rate has decreased in states in America. So these heavy metals do have an effect on our behavior, and we're still being exposed to them for our daily environment. Another a really common one is microplastics. So microplastics seem to be everywhere, including in our tap water as well. But it's also like on the clothes that we wear, which we wash, and it goes into our water supply or in our food chain. And something like plastic in general, it's a forever chemical. I think everyone's aware that if you have a plastic toy or something and you dig it up into the ground, 50 years later you dig it up, it looks exactly the same. So when microplastics come into our bodies through the food chain, so through what we eat or through what we drink, or even children like drinking from a plastic bottle, so when they are still drinking from a baby bottle, plastic bottles, these are microplastics for a reason. They're really, really small, but once they get into your body, they stay there. It's very, very difficult to get out. And these things have a change in our behavior, and it's changed our biology, which is why some things like infertility has risen quite sharply in the last 10 years. Semen count has decreased quite a lot in the last 10 years. The severity of autism symptoms and ADHD symptoms has skyrocketed. Food allergies. When I was a kid, which wasn't that long ago, I'm 34 now. So when I was a kid in primary school, there was one boy with a peanut allergy, and we were all shocked, like, oh my God, like if he eats a peanut, it's dangerous for him, like he could die. That's weird. And then in my secondary school, there was no children with any food allergies. In my son's class at school, about a third of his class have multiple food allergies.
Wow.
In my parents' generation, they could just eat anything and they would not come out in hives, and they would not stop breathing or start vomiting. So something has changed in the environment, which I believe heavy metals is one of them. Those environmental toxins are one of them, which is causing those genes to switch on. Something called epigenetics. So those genes to switch on, which is why we're getting different symptoms and different struggles
like you say,
in each generation.
the lead in the water. We should have learnt by the Romans. That's what, that's their issue. It's crazy, isn't it? It is insane. Especially, I've read about that in America where they've reduced lead and it's taken down all sorts of crime.
Yeah, they kept lead in their lipstick, by the way. There's
really?
still lead. Yeah. So there's no lead in petrol fumes, but you can have lead in lipstick legally, and that's all okay.
Yeah, put on the most absorbable part of your body.
Yes. Yeah. Really sad. Yeah.
Obviously, in Britain, we are opening up to more of a diverse issues, mental health, autism. Like we talked about earlier, that there is no hope, or it is what it is. You just have to make the best out of your own situation. Or is there a little bit more openness than what we typically expect in Britain?
In general, in the UK, there's more a conversation about these things.
Yeah.
Which is really helpful. But I think more than a culture difference, there's more of a generational difference. That's what I believe. So the people who are like Asian or like Indian or Pakistani, but they're my generation, they are definitely more open to neurodiversity and mental health, depression, anxiety, these sort of conversations. But the elders in the Asian community are a lot less open to it, and they're a lot less educated about it. So I feel like you might still find that in British culture as well, where the older generations are a lot less open to mental health compared to people our age. More of a generational thing, but there probably is a little bit more of a stigma in the Asian community.
And sorry, just going back to one of the steps in your book, the importance of gut health. Now, I was nodding along from there. I've done biochemistry at university, microbiology. I understand a little bit of the innards of how the stomach works, and something I deal with my own anxiety and depression is a lot of cortisol buildup almost in the stomach. It gives a lot of horrible sensations, that nervous feelings, and rightly so. The stomach being called the second brain of the body because it's got so many nerve endings. Could you just talk about just how crucial that is then to get right? Because, like you say, if it's the second brain of the body, then we want to be treating it just as importantly as the first. Sure.
So that I'm so glad you know all about it, and like you said, you're nodding along. But your gut and your brain talk to each other every single second of the day bi-directionally. So your gut will send signals to your brain and give instructions to your brain, and your brain sends signals to your gut. So they almost work hand in hand. So if one's not right, the other's not right. So that's why a lot of people can say that, my anxiety is a lot worse when I eat something like sugar or something that's quite inflammatory, or coffee. That's another example, caffeine. What we put in our mouths has a big impact on our brain health. Another like mindset shift that I got around when I was learning about all these things for my child is that I had in my brain, because I did pharmacology as one of the modules in dental school. I did all of that as well. I had in my brain that if I ate a paracetamol, it will cause a chemical reaction in my body, which will decrease my fever and decrease my headache. But I never made the jump to, okay, if I eat these French fries or this McDonald's burger, it's going to cause a chemical reaction in my body, which will influence my mood and will influence, how well I can get up in the morning or my freshness or, all these things like that. I had never made that jump. But really, we eat, thousands of kilograms of food every single year. And, compared to, minimal compared to drugs, how much drugs we take a year. So food really is our first medicine. And the reason why we're probably seeing a skyrocketing in autoimmune conditions and, anxiety and depression and all of those other conditions as well. A lot of it is probably our food environment as well. We are definitely all more stressed, and the screens and all of those things, as we find it harder to switch off, and we're all dealing with more compared to previous generations in that way. But the food environment has changed a lot as well, which can cause that build up in cortisol in your body, like you said. And another distinct pattern about an autistic child's gut microbiome is that they show more oxidative stress in their gut microbiome as well. That's part of a typical gut microbiome for an autistic child.
Yeah, thanks for that. It really fascinates me as well, just hearing it again. It's just always really refreshing. I always say good food equals good mood, because
Yeah, good food
it
equals good mood.
is
I like
so
that.
important.
Yes.
And we're so bad at times that we have the information there. We know what's good for us, we know what's bad for us, but we choose to ignore it. But I guess that is part of being a little bit human at the end of the day. But listening to you and talking to you describe the steps in this book, it sounds as well that although targeting how it can unlock autism, it actually sounds like it could help a lot of people in general.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of information in there that a lot of people could take away. So, yeah, just ask that question. Would you believe that, the information that you're covering here could help the likes of myself when we're talking about the importance of gut health, when we're talking about biomarkers, and how our mind and body is connecting?
Two things I would say to that is that a lot of the children I treat on my program have multiple conditions. So very common is autism and ADHD. So one of the children on my program, he was prescribed an antipsychotic drug for his ADHD, and within I think about 4 or 5 months, he's completely off that drug now. So it's
Wow.
improved his ADHD symptoms as well, which is really great.
Yeah, that's
Um,
insane.
but you're right. So how I like to describe it is that so a lot of these, like you said, like the gut health, the detoxification, the heavy metals, the cerebellum growth, that can all cause a lots of different conditions, not just autism. So it's like how an example like cigarettes could cause, heart attack, or it could cause lung cancer, or it could cause, yellow teeth. So it's like one cause can cause lots of different outcomes. So again, that one cause of poor nutrition, or heavy metal environment, and that can cause lots of different things. So it could cause if you, depending on if your child's prone to it, or an adult being prone to it, it could cause autism, like an increase in severity of the symptoms, or it could cause anxiety, or it could cause other more autoimmune conditions. So it's one of those things, like taking it back to the functional root causes of a lot of ailments are generally the same, which is like gut health and getting those foundations right, and the heavy metal environment and getting those foundations right. Methylation as well, in part of the step 2 breakdown blood, getting all of those foundation right can correct other problems as well. So even though I targeted this book for parents of autistic children, it probably would help a lot of people with other conditions as well.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to you and hearing it back. I know I'm guilty of that. I read a lot of stuff and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start doing that. It's really good for
Yeah.
me. And then when I'm hearing you talking, I'm like, God, a lot of this stuff could actually really benefit me as well. So it's
Yeah.
that's really refreshing. Is there a way you believe that we can help educate autism and learning about the complexity and the symptoms, even in lower education at schools? When I think back at when I was at high school, you had your basic science, and then it was third or fourth year in Scotland before you actually even got into biology. How important could it be to start teaching that in school so we could identify, even like dyspraxia slightly
Yeah.
earlier?
I think increased awareness for anything is a good thing in that way. So because of that, you can start spotting symptoms earlier, and then you can address problems before they become big problems. So it's easier to address a smaller problem than it is a bigger problem. So what I really like about my son's school is that they have, like, they do yoga now in his primary school, and that mind body connection, and and having, and in my child's preschool, they're teaching that language for their feelings. I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel frustrated. So I think all of those things, and having an increased awareness of it in society, has led to the development of it in our school curriculum. So I definitely think it's really, really helpful and addresses issues and problems earlier. And I wish I had that growing up. We didn't do any yoga in primary school, or no, no, we didn't do any of that. But so it's really nice to see that change. So I'm glad that change is happening in society. Another thing I really like is the neurodiversity movement. So I see what I do as going hand in hand with neurodiversity. So in the neurodiversity movement, how interpret it as, it doesn't matter how your brain is, it's got good things and you know, yeah, you might have some struggles, but you've got a lot of good points there and you can capitalize on that. My program doesn't erase any of the good points about autism. So like with my own son, I would say he's thriving because he has friends, and he, you know, he's conversational and he's able to take part and, you know, focus and learn new things, but he still has his own special interests. So he still has special interests as well, but he can have conversations about other things now, which is amazing. So, and he has like a really good ability to notice things. Like he has amazing observational skills and a really great long-term memory. So those are the things that people do associate with autism, and you don't get rid of those things if you do the program. So I see what I do is going hand in hand with neurodiversity, about appreciating all of the amazing qualities that autistic children have, or ADHD children or individuals have, but really unlocking it so that they, you know, you decrease their anxiety so that they can take part in society and lead themselves and lead others. So I see it's going hand in hand.
Yeah, that's so true, because it's so right what you're saying there about the neurodiversity movement and how important it is to ensure that people, that although they could have this diagnosis, that doesn't mean a definition. You know, neurodivergence, ADHDs, some of the best entrepreneurs in the world,
Absolutely.
some of the best problem solvers in the world, you know, are neurodivergent, and it's because they've got such beautiful minds. And I think it's so important to have these, you know, these discussions, because it does educate. It not only becomes instantly relatable to the likes of yourself, if you're listening as a parent with a child with autism, but even those are slightly unaware and will be hearing information during this conversation and hearing it for the first time and learning it and then taking that on. So I guess my final question for you would be that how rewarding has it been for you personally to be able to put your heart into something and have an end product that is working, that not only has helped you and has helped your son and has no doubt helped your entire family and a social group, but is now helping others in their social groups? That must be a tremendous feeling, right?
And it's the best part about the program, actually. So one of my clients, she's a dentist herself, and her husband's a doctor, and they moved from the UK to the UAE 3 years ago to get daily speech and language and daily ABA therapy and daily occupational therapy for their son. And then in January, I spoke to her, and she was so burnt out. So after 3 years of doing this daily therapy and moving countries to a country where she has no family at all, she was so burnt out. Like she couldn't even drive. Her son's symptoms and his behavior was that bad. And she looked so burnt out, and she'd given up hope. And her husband had said, you know, he's just born with it. There's nothing we can do. He's born with it. And then I told about my program and everything like that, and she's like, I couldn't not give up on my son. I had to try everything for him, and what I was talking about was something different to what she had tried. And her progress has been amazing with her son. So within 4 weeks, he regained eye contact. By April, his behavior was so much better. She was driving again. And she was like, you don't know how much you've changed my life already. I can drive again. I've got that freedom to drive again. By June, he got the okay to go to a mainstream school in September, completely off his ADHD medication. And she sent me like a thank you note, a voice note on WhatsApp. And I was so happy I couldn't sleep. Like honestly, I must have listened to that voice note so many times, and I actually shared it on my Instagram with her permission as well. But I was so happy I couldn't sleep. So I think I at the beginning, like I was the best achievement of my life was the transformation I did with my son, and I'd always like that's the biggest and best achievement I've done. And I was a little bit unsure, like, can I do this for other people's children as well? But the fact that it's been happening, and I've got so many parents saying to me now, we didn't think it was possible. We thought our son was too severe. We thought our daughter was going to go to a special needs school, and now she doesn't. And now, you know, he's a completely different person. That's actually the best part of the program. I honestly can't get over it. I actually love that part.
That's something that you'll never get over, because you'll like say, be able to enjoy it throughout. That's just, you know, self-nourishment is one of the most important factors of life for me, and it's it's so good that you're doing something that, you know, that just aligns with yourself so well, and it's just helping so many people. Taiba, I've absolutely loved having you on the show. This has been so informative, so nice and relaxed and casual, candid conversation about it. And yet I know it's going to help so many people. What I like to do just at the end of every episode is just offer a minute or two to the guest, just to say any words to maybe parents that has an autistic child. Maybe they've been confused. Maybe they've, you know, feel that they can go nowhere because their GP isn't seeing the issue that they're seeing as real. Could you just give any words of encouragement to anybody listening out there?
So I was in your shoes too. It's so easy to feel hopeless, and almost no one in society is giving you hope. And the people you look to for giving you hope, like the school teachers and the GPs, they're not providing that. But that's not a reason to give up hope. So just because they don't have that education or that time really to give to your child, there is definitely help out there. So I would encourage all of those people to learn as much about the biological causes of autism as possible, to learn how they can help their child. And they can do that through following me on social media. So my Instagram handle is called Autism Brain Empowerment, and that's the name of my business as well. So it's www.autismbrainempowerment.com. And they can pick up a copy of my book called Unlock Autism. So through that, you'll learn loads of strategies on how to help your own child at home. So really giving yourself that power to help your own child. And you don't need to rely on someone else coming to help you, because in this society, in the UK at least, the NHS and the school system, then no one's coming to help. And no one cares as much as the parents care about their own child. So I want to give all parents hope that it's not lifelong. There are definitely things you can do to improve your child's life, reach their milestones.
Thanks for that. And all the links that Taiba's just said will be directly below this episode as well, with direct links to go across and get a copy of the book as well. Taiba, thank you so much for coming on the Borderline podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Andy. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks. And like I say, I'm absolutely sure this is going to help. So I love the episodes, which I know that they're going to help people. We're quite a close little community, and I know firsthand how many parents have got an autistic child and how difficult that must be for them. So I know personally that this is actually going to help a lot of people. So it's really refreshing. Yeah, no, it's really good. So once again, guys, I hope you've really enjoyed this episode. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said again, all the links to anything we've spoken about is going to be in the description. I really hope you've enjoyed this one. So from Taiba Bajar and Andrew Willicks, this has been the Borderline Podcast. Good night.
Thank you.